Jess in Chicago. I am so excited to do this critique with you. Stephen has generously offered for me to host this critique solo today. So bear with me through any technical difficulties that we might have, but I think it's going to be great. I know this is a really great crop of images that we have today. A couple quick things off the top. This screen is going to look a little different for you today. So I am recording on a platform called Loom. Just as an FYI for you, that's why the video bubble here looks a little bit different. It's a really handy platform if you need to record yourself, and then you also want to record your screen for any purposes, really. And then the editing software that I use is Capture One. So I thought we would do today's critique in Capture One, just so that you can see something different. I know Stephen uses Lightroom. I have used Lightroom for years and recently made the switch. Part of the reason I made the switch, if that's a question at all, is I do a lot of tethered work, and that makes more sense for in-studio shots. You're probably not gonna be tethering if you're shooting outdoor, on-the-run photography. But for me, it makes more sense. And Capture One has more reliable tethering capabilities, I've found, than Lightroom does. So that's one of the reasons why I made the jump. So anyhow, here we are in Capture One. This is not meant to be a commercial, but let's jump into it. Also, it's just me, so I might be a little rambly today, but you know what? It's gonna be fine. We're gonna have a good time. So here we are, May Gallery Critique. Let's get to it. Okay, also just to give you a little bit of bearings here, sorry, I'm gonna move my little face bubble. The EXIF data, we can see some of it along here at the bottom of the image. So just so you know where that's located, I am not able to see in this current setup some of the camera information that has previously been in these critiques. If that's an issue, let me know. We can do this differently, but you know, for the sake of trying something new, here we are. All right, so first image here is from Stephen. You can see some of his shooting information down here at the bottom if you want to. This is a really cool shot. Also, I will say, I try to do these critiques blind. So I pretty much upload the images and try to not look at them. I like to really give you my sort of first fresh impression, knowing that I haven't thought about it behind the scenes for a while or anything like that. So I'm not sure where this is taken. This looks sort of Northern European to me. It's clearly a very misty, rainy type of day. I love this. This type of building vibe and scenery is just something that I really personally enjoy. You've got really great colors here. I mean, for as grayscale as this image really is, you've got some really nice color in the green building, this really strong yellow line, and frankly, this ladder, as small as that is really doing a lot for this image. You've got some nice reds and what I'm guessing is the edge of an umbrella on this side of the canal. Bit of a red flag here, and then some red roof line off to the right. So this looks really nice. The only two things that I'm gonna say that are really standing out to me, one is we're seeing a little bit of this, maybe it's a retaining wall, I'm not sure what this is at the bottom of the image here, but we're seeing just a little bit edge of whatever it is that we're standing on the other side of this canal, and I wonder if we could just crop this up a little bit and take some of that out. So let me see how capable I am here at editing while I talk. So, clearly you can set your constraints or not, but if you did this, I just took off a really little bit. I don't think that really detracts from the image. You still see a lot of canal here. You still have really nice balance between the amount of canal that you're seeing and the amount of sky and hill that you're seeing. So I personally would make that edit and just take out that little bit of wall that we were seeing popping out at the bottom. The only other thing that I'm seeing is this, and part of this is just because it's a misty, maybe rainy day. We're seeing really great detail here in the water and in this sort of foreground area. And then as we get towards the building, it's getting a little bit more, fuzzy is not the word because it's not fuzzy, it's just you're seeing that mist layer coming in. So I wonder if there's a way to make those buildings a little bit sharper. You could try to sharpen, you could just use the brush tool to select these buildings and try to sharpen a little bit. Maybe something to play with. It would be small, if anything. I think this, the hill and the sky, the tree line here, we even see some, maybe they're power lines. A little bit of sky and clouds. This is really nice. I love the sort of blurriness to this. You really get the feeling of clouds and mist coming in and out. Feels very natural. So I love that. I think it looks really great. And I think this is a really nice shot. So awesome. Thank you for sharing. Okay, let's move on to the second shot here from Kevin. Again, you can see some of the data down here at the bottom left corner. Cool. Okay, so very fun. Lots of movement. I love how we can see there's clearly like a main, this main stripe to the waterfall here. I'm not sure how big this is. I'm struggling a little bit with a sense of scale. I kind of think this may be a very small waterfall, not really a waterfall, just water falling off of rocks. Just based on some of the sizes of these rocks and what looks sort of like leaves. Although, frankly, I'm not sure. I would love to see a little bit of something in the image to give us a little bit of perspective. So maybe if we had a slightly wider crop and saw a little bit more of whatever's going on up here, does that give us a better sense of how big or small this might be? I think it's probably fairly small. But I do like that we see these sort of little mini water droplets, mini waterfalls happening off to the right. This is really nice. One other thing that I'm noticing is there's a lot of action happening, in sort of the right 2/3 of the image. And I wonder if we maybe don't need, sorry, let me unconstrain this crop. I wonder if we maybe don't need some of this that's over off to the left. If we bring it in a little bit tighter, like, did we really lose anything? I don't really think so. There's kind of a lot of shadow here. So we're not losing any detail that is in that area. And it's really just bringing your eye a little bit tighter to this main water spout and then these sort of miniature water droplet spouts. So that would be a quick edit from me. Just a little cropping might make this, a little bit of a tighter, like more concise image. But I think it looks really nice. The other thing that you could consider doing is, let me see if I can do this. Trying to record and edit at the same time is not the easiest. Okay, I can't reduce the size of my brush because of the Loom recording that's over here. Anyhow, I'm wondering if you could select some of these highlights that we're seeing in these very top rocks and bring that down just a bit. It's very, very bright, very high highlights right here on this water, which maybe bring down a touch, but logically that should be where the brightest highlights are. It's right here and right here. I think that makes a ton of sense. Where the highlights seem a little too high is in these rocks that are just on the very, very top of the image. I would probably just brush a little bit of these rocks right here, pull down the highlights in that area specifically. But otherwise, I think this looks really great. Okay, moving on. A shot here from Patrick O'Reilly. Very cool. I love this composition. Very sort of classic feeling. It feels like a painter has done this almost. Great curve. I guess you can see my mouse better than my hand. Great curve to the edge of the water here. And then I love this lighter green line, especially here. This lighter green line that comes in with maybe it's grasses that are on this hill. Yeah. The detail in the hill or the mountain itself is also really great, how we can see the different textures between the rocks and the greenery, shrubbery, whatever it is that's on this hillside. Really great. You've also got a lot of great textures in here, great textures in the clouds, the rocks and pebbles on the beach. You've got probably a somewhat windy day, giving you some good action in the water here. It's not a glass lake. It looks really nice. I don't think there's really much that I would change to this shot. If anything, you could potentially select the sky specifically and bring down highlights a little bit while trying to decrease some of these shadows. I would be a little worried that you're going to lose some depth. So I don't think I would really make that change. The other thing that you could do here is select this mountainside, just this stripe of mountain here. My thing is too large. Let me see if I can move this. That is so annoying. I'm so sorry. Anyhow. The other thing you could do is try to select just this mountainside and decrease some of the shadows there. Maybe a little bit more exposure on that hillside specifically. Not so much that you're losing the depth. You still very much want to feel, you know, it's lighter here in the foreground. The highlights on this grasses are wonderful. You don't want this to feel flat, but this is a very shadowed hillside at the moment. I wonder if a little bit more light might be a nice thing. So those would be the only edits that I would consider making here, but I think this is a really great shot as well. Thank you. I love this. I saw this shot come in, so Gordon Warren took this shot. I saw this shot come in as I was uploading, and it is just so cool. Like, there's just no two ways around it. Very cool shot. It feels like I'm looking through the pages of National Geographic or something. Really beautiful nature photography. The colors are incredible. I love the way, you know, I'd be really curious where you're standing. Where are you when this shot is taken? It seems like you're quite far away, judging from the data that we're seeing at the bottom of the image here, a 270 millimeter lens at the moment. But still, even the way that the bird is looking down towards the lens, or at least it feels that way, you know, maybe this bird is up in the tree and you're on a walkway or something like that. I'm just really curious about how this moment came about. But the tight crop is wonderful. The colors are wonderful. The expression that you've captured on the bird's face is really incredible. I do like that we get the feeling of leaves in the background. You know, we don't need to see them literally. We know they're leaves. We know this is probably a tree. You could potentially tone down some of the highlights in this background and maybe recover a little more detail. I think part of that is just the focal length and the lens that this was shot with. So I don't know that there's a lot of recovering to do with this shot. And I think that's really more of a stylistic choice than anything. So I think this is a wonderful shot. If you were going to do it again, you know, if you could replicate this exact moment, which you couldn't, but but if you could, might be interesting to do it with a slightly, you know, less shallow depth of field so that we see maybe a little bit more in the background here, whatever's going on, whether this is sky and it's just a cloudy day, or is it a building? You know, I'm not quite sure. But that would be maybe something to try for next time, if there is a next time. Regardless, this is a 10 out of 10 shot. Very, very cool. Lots of great detail, and I think it looks wonderful. Okay, so Deborah McPhail, you have heard this a million times. I don't know anything about birds. Couldn't tell you what bird this is, but it looks great. I love the composition here. Really simple. You know, just the way that the bird is sort of in profile and coming from the right. It's not perfectly centered. The eyeball is almost perfectly centered in this shot. Is really nice. The detail in these feathers is beautiful, and I love the highlights here on the top of the head, and especially this little tuft of feathers right here by the beak is really nice. And then you get this really awesome pop of blue and more detail with the blue and black stripes on this little bit of wing right here. It's really, really lovely. I think the depth of field is really nice. We clearly can tell this bird is in a yard, in a garden somewhere. These are bushes or trees or something that are in the background, but we don't need to know more. You know, that's enough information for us. This is a really random thought. I don't personally feel like the white frame is necessary. I'm not a fan of framing images in general. I think it looks nice here. I don't think it detracts. That's just my 2 cents. But overall, I think it looks really nice. The detail on the bird is really crisp. The colors are great. The light is wonderful, and the composition is a win. So this is a really solid image and a really great shot for this gallery. Okay, this is another image. I remember seeing this series from Steve Fleetwood in the gallery this month, and they are wonderful shots. This is such a cool shot. I would love to know who this man is. Who is this person? And what is your affiliation to this person? It's just so cool. The lighting is amazing. I know that the Capture One background is black, but you can just see the edge of the black frame here. I mean, there's so much negative space that you're taking advantage of in this shot. Even his jacket and shirt kind of feels like negative space because it's black against black. So you're really drawn to the highlights of the image, which really catch your eye here in the hair and the beard, the highlights here on the top of the head. And then it's the hands. You know, this hand in particular, for me, it's this edge of beard and then this hand. And it's just such a nice way to draw the eye across the image. It's also lovely that he's not looking at the camera. He's clearly looking sort of over his shoulder at someone, something, we don't know. But it's intriguing. It's a really intriguing look. It's a really intriguing pose. You get the feeling there's a lot of, there's action happening in this image. There's a lot of dynamic tension, and it's really wonderful. There's just enough detail, or just enough highlights of the detail to really tell a really strong story. So you've got all this really wonderful texture in his jacket. It looks like a very well-worn and loved jacket. Maybe this person wears this jacket every day of his life. I'm not sure. He's got his phone here in his hand, so maybe he's going somewhere. He's on his way to something exciting, hopefully. But just really cool. The texture in the hair and the beard is nice. The texture of the skin is really nice. I know, photographing people and particularly capturing skin can be really tough. And I think some people are often tempted to, sort of smooth out everything that they can. And that's one style to do things, but I think really showing, the texture of the skin is so powerful. If this was perfectly smooth and if these were perfectly smooth hands, it would not look the same one bit. It would not have the same story that it has in this shot. So this is an incredible shot. I love it. I don't think there's a single thing that I would change. I am curious if let me see if I can move this a little bit. So we're zooming in a little bit here. I'm curious what the background was, because I do think you have selected him and removed the background from wherever he was. But in general, it seems to have worked nicely. I think there's maybe a little bit of edges here that seem a little bit off. This edge just seems maybe a touch harsh, but I mean, look at all this hair that's still standing. These fine hairs are what gets lost if you are, taking a background out of a shot. So I think this has been done really, really well. Shot looks great. That's all I got. It's a win. 10 out of 10. Okay, next shot here is from Sharon Douglas. Another really great, moody, dark shot. Again, I know the Capture One background is black, but you can just see the edge of the frame here and how much sort of dark space there is in this photo. In an odd way, quite similar to the shot that we were just looking at of the man. Taking advantage of the negative space here is really wonderful. I like that it's not solid black per se. There is something here. I'm not sure what it is, but we don't need to know. You can just sort of see some shapes of something that's there in the background. I'm not even sure what this is, but it's nice. It's comforting. It feels like a real scene. Maybe this owl is perched on a branch or against a shed or something like that, but it just feels like a really nice, realistic live scene where you might see something like this. The expression on the face, and this might just be, the way the animal is, it just feels like the owl is sort of basking in this moment of sun. I'm imagining sort of a sunbeam coming through a window or coming through the trees, coming from behind a rock, and just giving this really wonderful beam of light that's straight down on this owl's face and highlighting, some of the most important details here. And it's wonderful. This is great highlight placement. You're seeing the eyes, the beak, this little bit of color is so powerful because it's not a lack of color, outside of that, but it's fairly monotone white and whites and browns. So this little bit of orangey yellow really stands out. The detail in the feathers is great. I mean, you have all these little scalloped layers around the head and then these sort of bigger scallops. as you get towards the wings. It's really beautiful. Yeah, I think this is great. The highlights are wonderful. Even this little bit, as we see sort of highlighted down the body, I think that's really great. You know, it just feels realistic. It doesn't feel, you can tell it's not like you selected an area and brought highlights in. This is actually how this was shot. This is how the sunlight fell. And it looks really wonderful here. Again, I'll just say it. I don't know what this is, this thing. I think it's in the foreground. I think we're looking beyond this thing at the owl, but I like it. You know, it gives some nice depth and adds some layers, and this object paired with whatever it is that's back there, I think just gives you a sense of where things are in this image and gives you a generally natural feeling to the shot just because of the colors and the shapes. This might be a tree stump or something like that, but it looks really great. I think this is a really wonderful shot. Really great detail. Love, 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 love the light. Love the use of a lot of negative space here to really focus the eye, and makes a really strong image. Well done. Okay, we have a shot here from Roz May. Wow, this looks like a postage stamp. So at least in the US here, we have a lot of eagle type of postage stamps, and this looks like an image that would go on there, like 100%. The detail on the bird and the eagle itself is really great. I mean, look at these, look at the eye, just the eye itself, and the depth and the color that you're seeing in here, this texture to, you know, this sort of skin that we're seeing, the feathers, the curve of these feathers. This is really nice. And then as you go farther down, you have these brown feathers with lighter scalloped edges, and they just look great. The detail is incredible. Great color, great detail. So this is one where I wonder about the background. I think this has certainly been removed, and I would be curious, I guess I would be curious why, frankly. You know, what was there that seemed so detracting? To me, this white just feels so artificial. And it's possible that it's real. I mean, it could just be a really oddly white, cloudy day. I kind of doubt it. I think the background has been removed. And I just wish there was a little bit something there, you know, a little bit of clouds to break it up, a little bit of, could be anything, a little bit of a tree, a little bit of some water. It doesn't really matter. I think that would just make this feel a little more natural, because right now the bird looks so wonderful, but the white just feels a bit unfinished to me. That is completely a personal preference, and hopefully you all have heard this a million times in these critiques, but a lot of the feedback that we share, it's all personal preference. There's no wrong way to take photographs or edit photographs. So it's just sort of what one person prefers over another. For me, I think the white space here feels a little unfinished, and I'd love to see a little bit something there to add to this, you know, sort of majestic scene that might be happening. Maybe it's this eagle is outdoors, this eagle is somewhere doing something. I'm lacking that in this shot, and it's something that I would love to see. My 2 cents. Okay, Duncan McKay, some really beautiful tulips. Yay for spring and all the green things. We have seen so many more wonderful floral shots, sort of young wildlife, lots of very fresh, lush greenery, you know, woods that are suddenly coming into bloom. And this is one of those shots. This is really cool. I like the composition with, you've got the hero tulip here, but then you've got a second tulip here who's very much playing a supporting role, not in focus, but you know, you get that repetition throughout the image, which is really wonderful. The sharpest focal point is, you know, in a great place. It's, you know, here inside the cup of the tulip, which is wonderful. I think that looks really great. The highlights are very high inside this cup. So I would probably take a brush tool and just select, you know, some of this area here and pull some of those highlights down just a little bit. You may also be able to highlight sort of this area of the cup, you know, this tulip cup, and decrease the shadows. So in sort of an up and down at the same time, where we're just evening this out a little bit. The shadows that we see here from these little stems are really nice. You definitely don't want to lose that. But I think in this area in particular, you're seeing some highlights that are, you know, a bit blown out here. So would love to even that out just a little bit. The other thing that's interesting here is the depth of field is very shallow. So you don't see, you know, we know how a tulip is shaped, right? It's shaped like this. So this point in the center is what's in focus, and these petal tops that are here, that are actually closest to the camera, are not in focus at all. I think it's an interesting choice, you know, shooting at an f5.6, 135 millimeter lens. Okay. I'm surprised we don't see a little more detail in those petals. But I guess that's, you know, if it was a higher f-stop, f9, 10, 11, something like that, you would see some more of those petal type of details. But I think this is nice. The center of the flower looks really nice. I would just balance some of those highlights a little bit. Okay, shot from Peter Moore. I remember seeing this one in the gallery, and it would actually be kind of funny if we could pull in your comments. You know how you upload an image and then you can name it and share some comments about the image. I remember there being something about this one. It's glassware with a candle that's missing, if I'm remembering correctly. It certainly looks like wax has dropped down. I don't know where the candle would be. Maybe it has literally fallen off. Maybe it was like a tapered candle and that has fallen off, and somehow this glass has broken, but the glass is standing up again. So frankly, I have some questions. I want to know a bit more about the story, and I think I said this in the gallery as well. I'd love to maybe back out of this shot a little bit, like a slightly wider crop, just to understand, like, where is this? What's going on? Is this, you know, is this a candle that is set on, it maybe looks like a garden wall? Maybe we're certainly outside. Maybe this is a garden wall, or maybe there is a bistro table here and it got knocked off of the table during a meal. Who knows, making that up. But I'd love to just get a better feel of how this came about. I do also wonder where the candle is. Or has it just burned, the candle has burned down completely and the glass fell over. I don't know, but you see my point is I have a lot of questions over what is seemingly a very simple shot. I would just love to know a little bit more about how this broken candle, broken glass came to be. And I think a slightly wider crop and maybe a little bit of, you know, some storytelling elements in the shot might help us do that. With that said, I think the lighting is really nice. You get some really great, this dappled lighting that we're seeing in the edges here is really great. I love that. The highlights in the greenery is nice. I like that we're up against the greenery and we see that texture. We get that garden feel. The shadows in general are quite nice. The other thing that I do notice is the highlights on the wax itself. So not so much the highlights, you know, out here in the image, but the highlights on the wax. So dripping down here and having pooled at the bottom here, those highlights are very high. They also feel quite blue. You know, they're just sort of leaning that way in the white balance scale. So I would probably take a brush and just brush down this area and bring the highlights down just a little bit. Let me just see. That's the whole image, obviously. But even you can see on the histogram over here, this is the spike of highlights. It's very high and very far right. So I would just brush down this area and then bring those highlights down just a little bit. And then I would consider, even if you just select that area, adjusting the white balance a little bit to try to make that look a little bit more true white. For me, I'm getting a little bit of a blue tint, which might just be coming from, you know, the sun and the sky. That's probably where that's coming from. So those are my thoughts on this. I think it's a really intriguing shot and I would love to know more. Okay, next shot here is from Terrence Ellison. Wow, really interesting. We're shooting at a really fast shutter speed, 1/8,000. Sorry, I'm gonna zoom in a little bit here because I just want to see some details. Cool. Very cool. This is a really neat shot. The lighting and the environment is great. You're clearly, you know, this duck or goose is clearly sitting in a pond, some body of water. It looks wonderful. The ripples caused by the water look really great. And I love that we're seeing this reflection of the, you know, head and neck of this bird. That's really nice. The lighting in general is really great. You know, great highlights here on the front of the bird and a bit here on the back and start of the wings there. We also see a little bit of what I'm going to guess is maybe some park. In the background here, we see grass, we see trees, we see a little bit of sky. It's really nice. I also like that we don't see people or anything like that. There's no other birds in this shot. I think it looks, you know, like a really nice sort of bird portrait. I'm going to zoom in pretty far here and ask a little question. What is going on right here? There is a little sort of black blur. I'm not sure what that is, so I'm going to guess that, you know, a brush was used or maybe something was here that was removed. I can't quite tell, but maybe there's something that was here that was removed and we're seeing just a little bit of it left over in this, you know, slightly gray patch right there by the eye. So I would just, you know, tighten that up a little bit. I think you can probably get a pretty crisp line on the bird's head just there. But yeah, I mean, even if there was an object there, I don't see any other real indication of it. The only thing you might do as well is this. So there's sort of the edge of this pool, the edge of this pond. You can tell there's a brown, maybe it's a stone surround. And then there's almost like this little bit of a black line at the edge of the water and the stone. We're fading off a little bit here. So my guess is that something was removed from this chunk of the image, and I would just tighten up a little bit on this part right by the eye, and then I would just tighten up a little bit on what would be sort of the edge of the wall here and try to make it mirror a little bit more of what you see of the wall here. It just feels a little bit off. But honestly, at first glance, it wasn't something that I noticed. It's something that I noticed after looking a little bit longer and a little bit closer. I think it's a really great shot and it looks really nice. I would just tighten up a smidge of that editing, but it looks really great. Well done. Okay, we have a shot here from Helen Martha. Let me see if I can zoom in a little. Oh, yeah, that's fine. Okay, great. So this is some kind of red squirrel. Very cool. Wow, the detail in these hands, feet, claws is really nice, really great. Definitely a lot of storytelling here. You very much get the vibe that this is a bird feeder and this squirrel is trying to break in. I'm gonna guess this has happened before. You know, this blue sheet is probably something that has been set up to try to deter the squirrel from doing this. So that's kind of funny just to see the squirrel doing it anyhow. So let me back out a little bit here. The depth of field is really nice. I really like this bokeh that we have going on in the background. We can clearly tell, you know, partly due to this as well, but we can clearly tell it's trees, it's greenery, it's a bright day, feels springy, feels summery, feels really nice. The light though is a little bit high. So a little bit here in this area, a little bit here, but definitely here, this rim of the squirrel, this top edge of the squirrel here is very, very high highlights. So I would take a brush tool to this line right here, and then I would probably take a brush tool about here, and then a third brush tool about here, and I would individually bring the highlights down just a little bit in those areas. This line on the squirrel, probably bring that down quite a bit. You still want to see a highlight, you still want to see the light on the edge of the squirrel, but it doesn't need to be so white as it is right now. So that would be my main edit to this image. Otherwise, I think you've got great texture. I mean, this bird feeder, the wood of this looks really nice. We see that there are, maybe these are sunflower seeds, I'm not quite sure. But it looks really great. The colors are really great. So that would be my one edit to this shot, is to adjust some of those highlights, particularly on that rim edge of the squirrel. I would bring that down a bit. Okay, we are flying. So this is the last image that we have in this critique today. This is from Joe Kayaks. We don't see any data here, but that's all right. Cool. I don't know where this is, but it looks really neat. There's a lot going on here. This might look like a sort of simple image, but there's really a lot happening. So we are clearly up on the hillside of some town. There's a hiking path. Maybe we hiked up here. Maybe this person's hiking with us. Not sure, but I like that we can see this hiker. That really adds a nice human element to the shot, adds some sense of scale, adds a bit of storytelling as to where we are as the viewer. Where are we standing in this image and how did we get there? That's really nice and just gives you a sense of this city as well. It's clearly a city, but there's also clearly a lot of greenery. And, you know, if they are a city that prioritizes hiking paths nearby, that's really cool. And I think that, you know, that just tells you a lot about this place. So the bridges are awesome. We have some great repetition and geometric shapes with all of the architecture that we're seeing here, particularly in the bridges. This whitish yellow curved bridge. Then we have this black bridge, and we have a blue bridge that has its own repeating arcs in the back there. And we even get a little bit more of the black bridge on this side, particularly with this reflection right here. So really nice architectural details and repetition. And then you also get, of course, you know, repetition in the square rectangular building shapes here, and some great color. It balances really nicely. So the color of this block balances really nicely with the natural elements in green of this block and this more sort of foreground block. That's a really nice composition, really nice juxtaposition, I guess is the word I'm going for. And then, so if that weren't enough, we get a little farther out. We have this really nice hillside in the back, but we also have a storm that's clearly brewing. We can see some dark clouds. It looks like it is definitely raining farther away. Maybe that is heading for us. You know, as we're hiking up here on this path, you can just kind of imagine, you know, what that feels like in the air and how that might be impacting your morning hike. Which is just really cool. So there's really some great layers to this image. You've got this first layer of greenery and person hiking, second layer of bridges and buildings, and then third layer of distant hill, you know, the farther hillside, and the sky and rain clouds, which is really nice. So there's really a ton packed in here. As far as any edits that I might make, I don't really think there's anything I would change here. If I could, I would love it if this person wasn't quite so far left and so far in the corner. If they were a little bit more where this sign is, that could be really nice. Or maybe if this cropped edge went just a little bit further and they just weren't quite so far on the edge, I think that could be good. You know, this sign is something that catches my eye. Personal preference, you know, it's something that you could take out for sure, but I also think that it makes it very clear that this is a hiking path and this is a, you know, probably a map or some kind of informational sign about this lookout. So that doesn't bother me, and I think it makes sense with the path that we see and the hiker that we see here. If we didn't see this hiker and that sign was there, it might feel a little more distracting, and that might be something that I'd be tempted to take out. The other thing that we do see, and just a little bit here, are cars on this, you know, bridge, freeway, which is nice. And it adds just another human feeling element and sort of sense of movement to the shot. And that is really great as well. So there's really not a lot that I would change to this shot. I think it's great. You've got great lighting. I particularly love the highlights on this bridge. But then you've got some great, you know, depth and darker shadows with these storm clouds and some of these very far off additional hills that we're seeing back here. Let me zoom in a little bit if that's working. Yeah, so you can definitely tell it's clearly raining in this chunk, but then you still have some of this hill detail back here, which is really nice against this cloud line. So very cool, very neat scene, great photo. Love the composition. Don't change it. All right, so hopefully that wasn't too bad. I apologize that I was not able to use the brush tool and do some of the editing that we normally would have, but hopefully this was helpful, and just hearing somebody's perspective on some of these shots hopefully is useful. So there's a couple things coming up that I wanted to flag for you all. Coming up in June, there will be a photo quiz. It will be live. Not sure on the date yet, so stand by on that one. On the 15th, there will be a competition critique. And then also at some point in the month, there will be a black and white photo critique. I know we've seen some really great black and white images in the gallery, and so that will be a really fun time to just pull those out specifically. And then on the 30th of June, we will do another gallery critique. So that's what you can expect in June. Hopefully this has been a useful critique and helpful session, but give a shout if there's anything you need or any questions you have. We're always here to help. Thank you.